right, so something fun that we'll be talking about while we're on the board together and for years to come is the landfill, waste options, and all that's going to, I'm still educating myself.
And what do you think of it? So what you've learned so far?
Man, is it complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really complicated, but it's not sustainable for 30 years. We're not going to be able to use that landfill. So what do? Is it different technology? We can't mine our way out of this problem with the landfill. So how do we ship it off island? How does that work? Where does it go? Will it cost more money in the short term versus long term? Do you have any? I mean, you've been dealing with this for 5 years now.
Yeah, longer. We've been dealing it for. I was part of seeing how bad the agreement was 20 years ago.
Right.
And it's it's an example of sort of unintended consequences. You think you're doing one thing and you're trying your best, and you don't have enough information. You don't make a good deal, or you do something under pressure, and then we're stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think and we were sold something. We were sold that this thing's going to be magic. You're going to just put the stuff in and it's going to come out the other end and you're not going to have to sort and blah, blah, blah. And it ended up not being any of that. I think, sort of I've looked a little bit into what other communities, Seattle and places do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there has to be more sorting up front, and there has to be an incentive to sort. Like places, there's a lot of things that could be compost and they don't even have to go through the compost. You just put them in a pile in the ground and 3 months later, you'll have beautiful compost. What's coming out of that digester now a lot of times isn't really usable. It's got glass and other stuff in it, and there's no incentive right now in that contract for waste options to get as much off the island as possible. Their incentive is to get as many tons as they can over the scale, so they get paid. But there's no incentive to get there's a couple. We tried to add recently tried to add an incentive for that, but it's sort of whatever it is, the interests have to align. You have to sort of have the self-interest set up to do what we needed to do, and and I'm sort of heading where Rick is. I'm sort of thinking we should be getting a lot of it off the island. It's sitting there leaching into the into the ponds, and we're trying to fix them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. So we're gonna have some fun with that, I think.
I know there are some things they're trying to improve now with health department and natural resources, trying to do more testing of what comes out of the compost, testing the some of the cells, and just to kind of really see on a week, not just once a year, to see what's leaching into everywhere.
And that should be informative. That should help us determine whether we should be doing it, continuing it, in the future.
And how much it affects the water quality in Matticat, and
I have a question. What do you think of special town meeting?
This particular one, or just
in general? In general, and this one.
In general, I think we've gotten so big. I don't see us not having special town meetings. Maybe not every year for 10 years, but there's just so much going on. I think with the outcry of how many people did not come to this last annual town meeting, not interested, or they can't take off work, or they're busy, to split them up and have two smaller ones, maybe that helps people, just they don't have to know 15 or 20 issues all in April. They can kind of spread it out. So in that sense, I think it's good. I think this particular one, I like that we have, that we can kind of tackle the marijuana issue now versus kind of waiting and having a moratorium and just kicking the can down the road. Let's just deal with it now.
And I agree 100% with that.
Mm-hmm.
My concern with the special town meeting is it becomes a special interest town meeting, and people are putting their special interests in. So, sort of more sewer extensions to the benefit of the people, not necessarily because we need to extend them. And issues like that, where it's a special town meeting, not as many people may show up, pack the room with your neighbors, vote yourself your benefit, and out you go. That might not necessarily be good government, and could have some long-term impacts on the island, in a bunch of different ways. So that's my concern with it, I think, and some of that's already happening. I think some of those articles are heading our way. So I think
that happens more in the special town meeting versus the
it happens
ATM,
at both. It happens at both, and I think sort of we made a mistake. Right now, in my opinion, I think that the not adding some sort of betterment onto the homeowners for the sewer is a huge mistake, because now the interests are such that it's in the homeowner's interest to get the rest of us to subsidize what they have to do. If there's no charge, it's going to cost them $50,000, $70,000 from an IA system. Oh, I don't have to pay it. Much better get the town to put the pipe in front of my house, and I pay 10 or 15 grand. So the incentive should have been close, and then the people would be making the decision on a basis of water quality and in the needs areas instead of, geez, I need people to bail me out. I think I think you're going to see more of it in the future because of what we did basically in the Plus articles.
Right. That was 100%.
100%, and I think that 30%, 40%, 50, something like that would have aligned the costs more equally. So then I think then we would have been making the choice, sort of it wouldn't be such a disparity between people not on it and on, and between the actual cost for an IA and this. All of a sudden there wouldn't be quite the subsidy.
Mm-hmm.
And I said the same thing on the boulevard. Like we shouldn't be taking roads because people are upset and their road is bad. We should be bettering them something a little bit.
Right.
It's just so because otherwise the incentive is to build a crappy road and then yell loud enough that the town takes care of it for you.
Right. Is it safe to say that if you had a 20 or 30% betterment, that it would just get shot down because nobody wants to pay for it?
I don't think so. I think the Matticat got shot down because the septic people were upset. In part. And I think it was also the huge price tag, and and Visco and Atherton saying, "Geez, we're not sure this is the solution to something else." And they're credible and smart guys. Yeah. So it was a combination, but I think and it's interesting that the recent bid we saw came in, like half price. So what would have happened if that had been
the recent bid for the sewer project and the Plus parcels in Shimo?
Shimo came out in about half the estimate, a little bit more. But imagine if we had gone and said Matticat was 60% of what we were saying. Maybe it would have passed even at 100%. I tend to think it wouldn't have at 100, but I think it might have at 30 or 40, somewhere in there. Where the cost to the homeowner is similar to an IA system. Or the all-in cost, not just for the betterment, but there are other expenses too. And then all of a sudden it would have been, I think people would have seen it as a fair, something that was fair. So, I think that's a lot of what I think should be happening is fairness. We should understand something so well that we're able to be fair to everybody. And sometimes I don't think we do. Sometimes I think we're lobbied or we're pressured or and we make a decision and we find out later, oh, look at what happened,
Okay.
But that's
a lot of stuff going on this island.
There is.
It's a lot of big stuff. And I'm sure it wasn't any different, didn't feel any different in the 70s or the 80s.
It did. We're at warp speed right now.
Okay.
It's, I grew up, there was 3,000, 4,000 people here in the winter, and it might have gone to 10 in the summer. There was no bike path to Surfside. There were no houses at Surfside. There were no houses we had a shack down at the Jetties Beach. There were 3 shacks in the hill there that we go to in the summer. So some things haven't changed, and the island families, rent their houses or move out and try to find a way to make a living here. But other things have changed. We're just at a whole different speed. It happens faster. People expect things immediately. Society is different.
Do you think our form of government is going to be able to continue to kind of manage the island efficiently?
I think so, because I'm not so sure government is efficient to begin with. Any form of government is all that efficient compared to running a business or something. I don't, so I think there's going to be that, and I think the founding fathers expected that. They kind of knew it was going to be messy, and democracy is a lot of hard work. So, I think that some of this is to be expected. I might not have thought that 20 years ago, but I do now. And I think, so I think the form of government I don't think is as big an issue. I think the stuff you were talking about with the housing for the hospital, I think that's a bigger issue for the town. If we don't find a way to retain good people, to, and just look at some of the problems we're having now, trying to hire someone for the island home and retain department heads and retain employees. I think, and I've been saying this for 20 years because I've housed people for 30, but I couldn't run my business. It's a very labor-intensive business with 45 people in the peak season and 4 or 5 in the winter. I couldn't run it without housing. And, right now, I don't think the town can run without housing. And so,
Should we build housing? Should the town?
I I think we've got to do something. In a word, yeah, I think we have to do something, or we've got to build housing that has some sort of town preference and a percentage of it, and find a legal way to do that. Because otherwise, how do you retain the good people? And that, and I know some people are like, well, we'll just have to pay more. Well, those are people who are already in and are all set. Like, just pay more and it'll be great. Well, it's great for you if you're all set, but there's no amount of money if someone can't find a place to live that's going to get them on the Nantucket. And there's only so long that someone can sleep on someone's couch or move 3 times a year. What is it? We have fewer year-round homes this last couple of years than we did the year before, yet we're building 200 plus homes a year and renovating so many. Well, it's the outside demand. Like, people who say supply and demand will take care of it are 100% wrong. I believe in supply and demand. I was trained as an economist, but that's not, they're not looking at the outside demand. The outside demand so outstrips the supply and everything else, and the people have so much money, and it's not even individuals, like we said. It's
how do you
get
People,
consortiums?
how do you get people to take a hit on renting out their cottage and give it to a year-round family versus renting out weekly when they know they can make more money? Right, so more people are going towards that, so they're changing their year-round rentals.
Right, and so so we should be considering things like, you want to build a tertiary, you want to build a secondary. Some houses should have a covenant on it. Maybe not affordability covenant, just a year-round covenant. You have to have different tiers to service the different parts of the market. And I know that's quote unquote un-American and communist and all that, but that's we have to come to grips with the fact that and if we give something, let's say we're increasing density. Like, pick corner of Fairgrounds and Rugged Road on my property. Let's pretend it's there, so I'm not beating anyone else up. If we were going to do that, I should be forced to, if you're going to say, okay, Matt, instead of 6 homes on these 3 lots, you can have 12. The town should be asking for something back. They just gave me 6 more homes. They just gave me, what is that? Pick a number. $3 million worth of value. I should be expected to pay they should either be year-round affordable, or year-round rental or housing, or they should be there should be design standards, and I should be responsible to do the bike paths and the other things that it entails. Like, we shouldn't be afraid of putting requirements on when people have benefited so greatly. And I said that about First Way when we did the whole First Way thing. We went down First Way and increased it, double the density, and now we're going down First Way, and we all are paying to fix it. That should have been a requirement of everybody getting twice as much value in that in their neighborhood. They should have, that point, we should have been working with them to fix their neighborhood, instead of kicking the can down the road and 15 years later we're fixing it.
So trying to add some ways to control growth.
Well, it's
like, if you are going to grow, then
it's in control growth. All of a sudden, people go, "Oh, you're anti-growth." I'm not anti-growth. I'm anti us subsidizing everything. I think there's a lot of small businesses and a lot of islanders who are struggling to make ends meet here, and all the arguments about our tax rate is low and we don't pay anything and all that. That's not really reality. Our average wage is low, and a lot of people are having trouble already. So you can't just pile things on, that pile costs on. So I don't think I wouldn't say I'm anti-growth. I'd say I'm pro-fiscal. Understanding, fiscal fairness is a better way to say it. I just don't think that we can subsidize growth and subsidize full throttle growth and expect that we're going to get a great result. We're just going to run more people right off the island, and I think that so somehow we have to come to terms that it's okay to charge people. It's okay if they're getting a lot. It's okay to charge them a little bit.
Well, thank you, Matt. I could do this for another 45 minutes, but
I'll come back.
No, this is good. Thank you very much.
And I didn't ask enough questions. Next time I'll
come
with more questions.
Okay, we'll switch it around next time.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.